The political landscape in Texas has entered a new and consequential phase after a major development involving congressional redistricting and a long-serving Democratic lawmaker. Representative Lloyd Doggett, one of the most established and recognizable Democratic voices in the Texas delegation, has announced that he will not seek re-election. His decision comes less than 24 hours after the Supreme Court allowed the state of Texas to move forward with a Republican-backed congressional map, one supported by former President Donald Trump and widely expected to shift several seats away from Democrats. The newly approved congressional map is projected to eliminate as many as 5 Democratic-leaning districts. The ruling dramatically reshapes the political battlefield in Texas, with fallout that is already being felt across the state. For Doggett, whose decades-long political career has made him a familiar figure to voters in Austin and beyond, the Supreme Court's decision appears to have solidified a choice he had been contemplating for months. Doggett posted his announcement on X, formerly Twitter, acknowledging both the magnitude of the moment and his deep gratitude for the trust voters have placed in him over the last half-century. "I am most appreciative for the opportunity to have represented our community in public office for most of the last 50 years, he wrote. He went on to thank residents from McAllen to San Antonio, from La Grange to San Marcos, and of course the people of Austin, for supporting him through various districts he has represented over the decades, CD 10, CD 25, CD 35 and, most recently, CD 37. His long career spans nearly 50 years of service, beginning in the Texas Senate and later continuing in the U.S. House of Representatives, where he became one of the state's most senior and influential Democratic members. Over the years, Doggett has built a reputation for his work on education funding, immigration reform, healthcare policy, and fiscal oversight. For many Texans, he has become synonymous with progressive policy advocacy and long-term legislative consistency. But the new court-approved map would drastically reshape his district. Under the revised boundaries, Doggett would be paired against fellow Democrat Representative Greg Casar, who represents a younger generation of progressive voters and has gained considerable national attention in recent years. Rather than engage in what would likely become a contentious inter-party contest, Doggett chose a different course. He emphasized that he will continue serving with full dedication until the end of his current term, writing that he will continue working with the same urgency and determination as if next year were my last, which in public office it will be. After retiring from Congress, Doggett said he plans to remain active in public life, contributing in other ways to the community he has always called home. After that, I will seek new ways to join my neighbors in making a difference in the only town I have ever called home, he added, referring to Austin. The timing of his announcement is no coincidence. In August, Doggett had publicly stated that if the Supreme Court upheld the new congressional map, he would likely not run again. At the time, he expressed alarm over what he viewed as harmful changes to Democratic representation. When the High Court issued its ruling on Thursday, confirming that the Republican-drawn map could stand, Doggett followed through on his earlier remarks. The Supreme Court's decision was met with strong reactions across the political spectrum. The majority opinion allowed the Texas map to move forward without significant changes, while Justice Elena Kagan issued a deeply critical dissent. Doggett echoed her sentiments in his statement, saying that he agreed with Kagan's view that the court had failed in its duty to uphold fair representation. He described the ruling as one that weakens democratic principles by approving a map he believes was designed to dilute minority and Democratic voting power. Doggett's comments reflected the broader frustration expressed by critics of the redistricting plan. Opponents have long argued that the maps represent a form of racial gerrymandering. They contend that the lines were drawn in ways that undermine the voting influence of communities of color, especially Latino and Black voters who form a substantial portion of Texas's electorate. According to challengers in the lawsuit, the map was engineered to maximize Republican advantage while fragmenting Democratic-leaning populations and rearranging districts in ways that made competitive elections far less likely. Supporters of the map, however, maintain that the legislature acted within its authority and that the new district boundaries reflect population growth patterns, constitutional considerations, and the political realities of the state. They argue that claims of discrimination or partisan bias are overstated, and that the map is a legally valid expression of the legislature's redistricting power. The larger context behind the ruling underscores the growing national debate over redistricting and voting rights. Around the country, states have increasingly engaged in legal battles over who has the authority to draw maps, how districts should be configured, and whether the process fairly represents the population. The Texas case is only the latest example of how deeply contested the issue has become, with far-reaching consequences that could shape congressional control for years. Within Texas, Doggett's departure marks a significant moment in Democratic politics. As one of the longest-serving Democrats in the state, his exit leaves a leadership gap and reshapes expectations for the 2024 and 2026 political cycles. Younger Democrats such as Representative Kassar may now assume even more influence within the party, especially in the Austin metropolitan area. Many analysts believe this transition could signal a generational shift in Texas Democratic politics. At the same time, Republicans are positioning themselves to capitalize on the new district boundaries. With more favorable maps, the party hopes to expand its House majority and reinforce Texas's status as a Republican stronghold. The new configuration could significantly tighten the national race for congressional control, especially in a political climate already marked by polarization, shifting demographics, and strong ideological divides. Doggett's announcement adds emotional weight to an already contentious debate. He is retiring after nearly half a century of continuous public service, one of the longest careers in modern Texas political history. His voice has shaped multiple eras of policy, from education funding debates in the 1980s to healthcare reforms in the 2000s and beyond. Constituents and colleagues alike have described him as a steady, principled presence in a frequently shifting political landscape. In his closing remarks, Doggett warned of broader implications if voters do not remain engaged. He expressed concern about what he described as failings in our country brought on by Trump and his enablers, stating that Americans must work to ensure that democratic norms are not eroded. His message conveyed urgency about protecting democratic institutions and resisting what he views as rising threats to representative government. The combination of the Supreme Court's ruling, the new congressional map, and Doggett's decision not to seek re-election underscores how significantly the political ground is shifting. Advocacy groups, analysts, and lawmakers on both sides now view Texas as a core battleground, not in terms of partisan parity, but in the long-term fight over how representation is defined and who gets a voice at the federal level. For now, Doggett says he intends to use the rest of his term to push forward as vigorously as ever. His upcoming departure marks the end of a long chapter but also the beginning of a new era in Texas politics, one defined by legal battles, demographic change, and continued disputes over the future of American democracy. As the state braces for its next election cycle under the new maps, Doggett's exit serves as both a symbolic and practical turning point in the unfolding story of Texas's political identity.